Well, step aside, Kendrick Lamar and Drake. The biggest beef of the year is Miguel Rodrigo and those scoundrels over at France and Iran after they tried to fix their match, as we covered in the last video. Miguel Rodrigo wanted all of the smoke and took to social media to complain, as you guys know. Now, in the last video, we talked about that. We talked about the lack of play from both teams, the inability to get past half court, the obvious double passes to goalkeepers to force shots on goal on free kicks for the other team. Those shots being taken extremely waywardly on purpose. And then, of course, the famous now goalkeeper step aside to get out of the way of that goal for Iran, at which point Iran finally decided to play. They said, hell, we're already ahead. We might as well keep going now. We covered that in to nauseum in the last video, so this is the quick highlight to get you guys caught up. If you don't know what we're talking about, please go back and watch the last video to fully understand, but it didn't end there. Miguel wanted to continue to fight for the greater good, as all of us should, and continue to call out their deplorable actions on social media. A handful of NFAs actually complained to FIFA, including Thailand and Libya, just to name a couple, Paraguay as well. But they were not successful, it seems, as France was able to continue through the tournament, essentially making it to the final day. If you guys are caught up by the time this video goes out, you know the results of that. But we unfortunately did not see any action to either team. Now, the problem with Iran was fixed very quickly because they were knocked out by Morocco in the first round. Understandable now that we understand that they could not take on Morocco, and that's why they were trying to avoid them. But France was successful continuing on in their tournament and continued to be a black eye on this tournament as they continued to progress. Laughably, Iran complaining to FIFA about Miguel Rodrigo as well as to the AFC, as they are both teams from AFC. That of course, was followed up by the complaints from their fans. Miguel Rodrigo actually shared on his social media a video of a minute long of comments that he had received from the great people of Iran and France, and their very vulgar language for him and for his family. Of course, he has reported he is safe and fine, as well as his family, and nothing has been serious other than just some really gutter rats out of the internet, as we see all the time in these situations. But he was able to shrug that off and continue on his journey to fight for the greater good. France not far behind in those deplorable messages. And then it continued as on September 27th, when France faced Thailand, they would eventually lose to France 5-2. And Miguel attempted to be a good sport and go over to France's side. Now, throughout the game, Miguel has made claims that during timeouts, when they were down 3-1, that the French coach was making movements of talk to him as he was trying to give his speech during his timeout, and were very unprofessional throughout the end of the game. And then at the end of the game, they refused to address their unprofessional behavior between themselves and a couple of players, including specifically, he called out Abbasamad Mohammed as one of the players that continued to jaw at him. Now, at the end of this game, all we saw on the TV coverage was Miguel essentially getting a red card and being red in the face himself and screaming at the French bench. He would go on to social media a few days later on October 2nd to clear the air. Let's take a look at the thread here, and what he shared with us was his side of the story from dealing with the French side during that game. To make my position clear, since in France they seem not to understand it, I would have normally accepted a round of 16 against France or Iran if they had lost their match in a sportsmanlike manner, and after the defeat, I would have wished them the best. Losing is part of the game. What I do not accept, but am willing to play, is a match against sportsmen who lack scruples and values. I played and lost, but the laughter and mockery after the 3-1, the lack of respect from the coach telling me with his hand over his mouth, talk, the requested timeout, with just seconds left to humiliate us, and the laughter and mockery of some players when I went to their bench to congratulate them. I got angry and shouted at them that they had no manners and no values. That's why I was sent off. Nothing else happened. At the end of the match, their captain came to me. They shook my hand and told me that it was all my fault that they were receiving threats because of me, giving this lack of awareness of what they had done. By not at least asking for forgiveness, I refused to shake their hand, and they told them that they had no education or values. That was all. There was nothing more. End. Now, one other thing I want to share with you guys is a post later in the day from Miguel of an interview from Kevin Ramirez, a player who shares a language with Miguel Rodrigo and was part of some of those disparaging conversations between the two sides. And he had this to say in an interview done in the arena.
The game against Iran, you guys lost on purpose. They also were trying, and I understand it because you didn't have to face Brazil or Morocco. So I don't particularly blame you in that, of course. But the fans who has bought the tickets to be there, does that feel tough for you? I know it is a tough question.
No, it's not tough question. To play one game, we have to be two teams. So, okay, I know the game was not so good to watch, but we are happy to be here now to play semi-final. We faced a great team, Argentina, and we are focused in the semi-final. We are where we wanted to be, so now we only focus about Argentina. We are really very happy to be here. We enjoyed a lot in Bukhara with people. I think we shared an amazing time with them. And now, believe me, we are only focused against Argentina.
Of course, and you deserved to be here, of course, I think, but you did lose on purpose, right? Or can't you say that on camera?
No, the show wasn't the biggest show of the world, the biggest game of the world we know about, but believe me, this team deserves to be here. This federation deserves to be here. The staff, all the players, the people don't know what we did in our life to be here. It's a long journey to be here, and we are focused against Argentina. Believe me, we deserve a lot to be here, and we are focused on the semi-final.
Now, I heard "believe me" quite a bit quoted in that statement. I don't know if he was trying to convince us or himself that France deserved to be there. They certainly, when they played really well. They certainly showcased very well what the investment that the French Football Federation has made in futsal and the accomplishments of that. You know, you spend 16 million euros, you expect results, and France has delivered on that in a lot of ways. However, it seems like a lot, especially when it came down to the question from the reporter being a little more blunt and a little more forward as it should have been in the beginning. And believe me, guys, I've done interviews myself. It is very tough to know when to toe that line of when to ask nicely and when to press. I'm not particularly great at it just yet, but I do understand, trying to ease into that a little bit as it is a touchy subject. Now, when the reporter did follow up and try to get that answer, of course, he sidestepped the question and through some stammering came up with an excuse. It's pretty clear what happened, guys. If you watch any bit of that game, you know, and you see what was really going on. This doesn't really fall on anyone's lap in particular, any other than maybe FIFA, as they need to address issues like this. It's not the first time it's happened. We mentioned in the previous video how Argentinian players, after the fact and after Miguel's social media statements, chimed in and mentioned that they thought in 2021 that Iran's output during their match in the final game of the group seemed questionable. And we'll see if more of this continues based on the way that the format is set. When you can be a second place team facing another lower seed team, there is certainly an advantage there if you think, especially coming out of a tough group. So absolutely needs to be addressed by FIFA. There needs to be a format change. But more importantly, after the video was shared and he revealed that Miguel himself was being investigated by FIFA. So it sounds like the investigation's request from Iran and possibly and assumably France worked out. Whereas to this date, and we are past the World Cup final at the time of me making this video, we do not know any more about the investigation into France or Iran or if it's even happening. So it's very bizarre. Once again, FIFA missing the mark as they typically do when it comes to drama and dealing with scandal. They don't do it well historically. But what was most interesting of all is even through all of this, now Miguel being in a position where they can actually pursue him as a coach, we also heard from the futsal legend Ricardinho. He had quite a bit to say about France's actions, especially as they progressed through the tournament. And he had this to say. He said, ridiculous still, the experts are praising France's progress in the World Cup. He followed that up in a statement as well, saying that France could win the World Cup and still be a team without values. And that holds very true. And I think that's what many people believed as they watched France continue on. Their entire performance in the knockout round was this giant blemish hanging out in the front of it because all anyone could think about was that group stage game. What was interesting as well, and Ricardinho brought up, and it really ties in well with what I said about France's investment in the game. They have focused on investing in schools and building up the youth programs to support these national teams, this national league. And Ricardinho brings up a really exceptional point, and it's what I think of as well as good example for the children. He highlights how, and I'm paraphrasing at this point, he highlights how, what a great message to the sportsmen, boys and girls in your home country to say, don't worry, guys, lose today on purpose so that you can go on to win tomorrow. What a ridiculous thing to be teaching the youth of that country or the world by participating this way in a World Cup. But the best part for me was when Ricardinho followed up and said they only have to let themselves lose to Argentina in the semifinal to avoid Brazil in the final. So why not avoid Brazil twice, right? Why not avoid the tough competition? Again, if you guys watch the games today, you know the end result. We'll cover that in a separate video that'll be a little more cheerful. But I thought it was really important to follow this follow-up and the ridiculousness of FIFA to even be investigating Miguel Rodrigo in any way, shape, or form. He did nothing but provide commentary on what actually happened during those games. I mean, outside of maybe the actions at the end of the game against each other between France and Thailand, I don't see why you need to investigate the man. Once again, FIFA gets it wrong. They're targeting the wrong person. And up to this point of making the video, still no word on what's going to happen with France and Iran as far as any future sanctions or punishments for what they've done. They could not have made it more obvious, and they're going to get away scot-free from the looks of things. I'm curious what you guys think about this. I am absolutely on the side of Miguel and Ricardinho and others on social media. It seems that a lot of French and Iranian fans don't feel anything was done wrong during that match and have gone as far as to be threatening in their messages to Miguel and blame him for this bad, dark shadow that's been cast over these two countries in their performance in the World Cup, when in reality they need to look inward to their own coach and teams. I don't know if it's necessarily the federations, because once these teams get there, the name's on the crest, but what can they do to control the output? I really put the blame on the coach and the players of this match. You could see the smirk on the face of Ramirez during his interview. He knew exactly where that question was going. He knew exactly what their team had done, and yet no remorse, which is what really fires up Miguel. I am with him in that regard. Represent our sport with some pride. It is insane that we have a club, or excuse me, a team, a nation that has traveled to the World Cup for their first time and can't represent themselves with some dignity after all they've invested in the sport. It's about the long game, and I thought France knew that based on the way they had invested in their game. Apparently that message didn't get down to the coach or the players that went on to represent them in the World Cup. And Iran seemed to be repeat offenders in this, so obviously they're not going to change, especially if FIFA's not going to do anything to create a repercussion for these kinds of actions. And then finally, FIFA's got to get it together. The fact that they are announcing and publicly pursuing Miguel, but not publicly pursuing these federations is shocking to me. It shouldn't be shocking after all we've seen FIFA do. I mean, they don't have documentaries about their corruption for nothing on Netflix. I mean, they have earned it. But it's absolutely insane to me that that is the direction they went with this. They are absolutely targeting the wrong person when they had an advocate for the sport and its integrity, and they are turning on them. Really insane to me. But I want to hear what you guys think. Is this blown just way out of proportion, or do you think that there is a gaping hole in taking care of the sport, and it has been highlighted by this World Cup in the group stage? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if I'm being absolutely nuts and overprotective of my sport here, or if you agree with us and what you think should happen next. And until I hear from you then in the comments, don't forget to play with your soul.